For more than a century, the beating heart of Western civilization was industrial. From the 1850s through the mid-20th century, industry wasn't just an economic system, it was a social order. Factories didn't only produce goods. They produced identity. The worker, the engineer, the builder, these were the heroes of the modern age. Cities like Detroit, Manchester, Sheffield, and Pittsburgh were cathedrals of progress. Smoke wasn't pollution. It was pride. By 1950, manufacturing made up nearly 30% of U.S. employment. In the UK, it was over 40%. The American dream and the British middle class were built on factory wages. But beneath the prosperity, the seeds of transformation were already growing. Industry, by its nature, is physical. It depends on workers, materials, and place. Finance is not. While the world celebrated production, another empire was quietly forming, one made not of steel and labor, but of numbers and credit. In the late 19th century, industrial capitalism had a twin, financial capitalism. J.P. Morgan didn't build railways himself. He financed them. The Rothschilds didn't mine gold, they lent it. And as the 20th century marched on, the financiers learned something powerful. Money can make more money faster than machines ever could. Still, for decades, industry and finance coexisted, one building, one funding. It was a fragile balance between making things and moving money. But by the 1970s, that balance broke. The oil crisis of 1973 sent shockwaves through the industrial world. Factories that once ran 24 hours began to shut their doors. Inflation surged. Currencies wobbled. Then, in 1971, President Richard Nixon made a quiet announcement that would change everything. He took the US dollar off the gold standard. It was the end of the Bretton Woods system, the financial architecture that had tied currencies to something real. Now, money itself was untethered, free to multiply, speculate, and expand without limit. And that freedom gave rise to a new era, the financialization of everything. By the late 1970s, the industrial world faced a reckoning. Corporations realized that making things in rich countries had become expensive. Labor was cheaper abroad. Environmental rules were stricter. Profit margins were thinner. The solution was simple, at least on paper: move the factories. Keep the profits. Manufacturing was offshored to Asia and Latin America. In the US, cities like Cleveland, Detroit, and Buffalo began to decay. In the UK, industrial towns from Sheffield to Liverpool faced mass unemployment. By 1990, the share of manufacturing jobs in the US had fallen below 17%. By 2010, it was under 9%. In Britain, manufacturing employment collapsed by over 60% in just 30 years, and yet GDP still grew. Stock markets soared. Governments pointed to rising numbers and said, "The economy is strong." But what was really growing wasn't production, it was finance. Banks, hedge funds, private equity firms, and insurers, these became the engines of the modern economy. The factory worker was replaced by the financial engineer. The tangible was replaced by the abstract. And the consequences of that shift would redefine the world. In the 1980s, political revolutions in both the US and the UK accelerated the shift. Ronald Reagan in America, Margaret Thatcher in Britain, both promised a new kind of freedom. But freedom for whom? Regulations were rolled back. Taxes on capital gains were cut. Markets were liberated. Wall Street and the City of London became global command centers of wealth. Between 1980 and 2007, financial sector profits in the U.S. quadrupled. By the eve of the 2008 crash, finance accounted for 40% of all corporate profits. Meanwhile, industrial towns crumbled, wages stagnated, debt soared. Yet the illusion of prosperity was carefully maintained. Consumers were encouraged to borrow for homes, cars, education, even as the real economy hollowed out. And the very thing that had once made the West powerful production was now outsourced to the nations it once colonized. Factories in China, India, and Southeast Asia churned out the goods. Western consumers bought them on credit. And Western banks financed both sides of the trade. It was a global loop of illusion, a system built not on creation, but circulation. By the late 1990s, the West was addicted to leverage. Money wasn't being earned, it was being borrowed. Entire fortunes were made not by building factories, but by moving risk. Derivatives, subprime mortgages, and speculative trading became the new industry. Even corporations once known for manufacturing began making more money from financial activities than from production. General Electric, once the pride of American engineering, was by the early 2000s effectively a finance company with a light bulb division. And then came 2008. The system built on debt and derivatives finally imploded. Trillions vanished overnight. Governments rushed to rescue the banks that had caused the crisis, not the workers who suffered from it. The contrast was stark. Factories were allowed to fail. Banks were deemed too big to fail. It was the final confirmation of a truth decades in the making. The industrial age was over. The financial age had fully arrived. The years after 2008 didn't reverse the trend, they cemented it. Central banks printed trillions through quantitative easing, flooding markets with liquidity. Interest rates were kept near zero for over a decade. The result? Asset prices, stocks, real estate, bonds exploded. Wealth inequality reached levels not seen since the 1920s. But the real economy, wages, productivity, manufacturing, stagnated. In the United States, 60% of workers now live paycheck to paycheck. In the UK, real wages have barely grown in 20 years. Meanwhile, billionaires doubled their wealth during the pandemic. Factories had once anchored communities. Finance dissolved them. Entire regions that once made things of value now trade in services that generate little more than numbers on screens. The system rewards speculation, not creation. And the people who once powered industrial growth now live in the shadow of financial empires they don't understand and can't access. As the West financialized, the East industrialized. China, in particular, absorbed the factories the West abandoned. In 1980, China's manufacturing output was less than 3% of global total. By 2020, it was nearly 30%, the largest in history. Meanwhile, the West became the world's consumer and debtor. Britain's balance of trade has been negative for over 40 consecutive years. The US imports nearly everything it consumes. Both nations rely on the strength of their currencies and their financial systems to sustain lifestyles that no longer produce the goods behind them. This is not sustainable, and the world knows it. Countries once dependent on Western capital, from Russia to Saudi Arabia to China, are now building systems to trade without the dollar. Energy deals, digital currencies, and commodity-backed trade systems are emerging that threaten to bypass Western financial dominance. The irony is profound. The West exported its factories, and with them, its power. But the real cost of this transformation can't be measured in GDP. It's written in the social fabric. Industrial work wasn't just about money. It gave people identity, pride, and purpose. When that disappeared, something else filled the void: despair, addiction, polarization, and rage. Entire communities in the US and UK that once built the modern world now feel abandoned by it. The so-called left behind aren't just economically displaced, they are existentially displaced. When work becomes abstract, life does too. People lose their connection to something tangible. The sense that effort equals reward evaporates. Finance promised efficiency, but it delivered alienation. A system optimized for profit forgot to optimize for people. And yet, even after multiple crises, the financial age keeps evolving, faster, more abstract, more seductive. Now, the factory floor is digital. Instead of workers, we have algorithms. Instead of production, we have speculation at the speed of light. The rise of cryptocurrencies, digital assets, and AI-driven trading has created an entirely new universe of financial activity, one where value is no longer anchored in labor, land, or goods. It's money building on money, floating further from anything real. In 2021, the total value of global derivatives was estimated at $1 quadrillion. That's more than 10 times the value of the entire world economy. It's a staggering symbol of how far finance has detached from reality. And yet, for many young people, finance, in the form of trading apps, NFTs, and passive income fantasies, has replaced work as a vision of the future. We are witnessing the cultural normalization of speculation. Everyone is encouraged to be an investor, even if no one produces anything anymore. The question is no longer whether finance can grow, but whether a society built on it can endure. Economies cannot live forever on credit and speculation. Something real must support them: energy, materials, production, innovation. As supply chains fracture and geopolitical tensions rise, nations are rediscovering the value of what they once abandoned: the ability to make things. The pandemic exposed how fragile the post-industrial model truly is. Suddenly, nations realized they couldn't produce basic goods, microchips, or even medical equipment without foreign supply chains. Now, governments talk about reshoring, industrial policy, and strategic manufacturing. But rebuilding what was lost may take generations. You can move factories overseas in a decade. Rebuilding the skills, culture, and trust that sustain them takes far longer. So what did we lose when the factories fell? We lost more than jobs. We lost the sense of cause and effect, the tangible link between effort and reward. We lost communities held together by shared purpose. And we lost the humility that comes from creating something real. Finance has given us efficiency, wealth, and speed, but it has also given us fragility. When a factory shuts down, the damage is local. When a financial system crashes, the world falls with it. We have built a civilization that can collapse in an instant, not because the machine stopped working, but because the numbers stopped adding up. The next era may not be about choosing between industry and finance, but about rediscovering balance. To rebuild economies that value both innovation and integrity, both profit and production, both speed and substance. When the factories fell, we told ourselves it was progress, that the future would be smarter, cleaner, more efficient. But maybe, just maybe, the future needs something older, something heavier, something real. Because no matter how fast money moves, a society without substance cannot last forever. What happens next depends on what we choose to build and whether we remember what it means to build at all. If you found this story thought-provoking, subscribe for more deep explorations into the hidden forces shaping our world and leave a comment below. Do you think the financial age can survive without something real beneath it?